Welcome to the Recovery Bros podcast. This is a weekly YouTube show where two guys in recovery, myself and Doug, we translate addiction and mental health science into simple systems that young men can actually live through honest conversation, practical frameworks, and real world tools. What up, bro?
What's up, bro? How you doing, man?
I'm good. So today I know we want to talk about two topics that are very much intertwined, which is identity and why. Right? These are like two very important parts of the recovery process, and they usually become really important early on. Like within the first 2 weeks of doing this thing, you really come to this moment where you're like, if I'm actually going to do this thing, if I'm actually going to try to figure out what a sober life looks like for the long term, I got to have a really good understanding of who I want to be as a sober person. Like who am I? And then once you kind of do that, it's like also the same thing is, well, why would I want to? Right? Those things are like so intertwined and they're such important foundations for recovery.
I agree. And McConaughey has the famous quote where he talks about like becoming your own hero, or my hero is who I am 5 to 10 years from now, or something like that. And I think it's so true, especially when it comes to transformation. And I'll say for me, one of the things that really helped was this whole identity piece. In that I remember leaving jail, I was scared of what was going to happen. I wasn't going to have any real supervision other than probation. I wasn't going to have things structured for me. I was going to be in an environment where um, the temptation for drugs was much greater than it was when I was in jail. And what helped me was I thought about who I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted to be a guy that was in good shape. I knew I wanted to be a guy that wasn't miserable anymore. I knew I wanted to be a guy that kept his word. I knew I wanted to be a guy that was successful. And I had control over that. And I knew that there was certain actions I could take on a daily basis to get there. So I knew that if I stayed away from certain foods, if I stayed away from certain people, if I didn't use drugs, if I worked out, all those things would help me get closer to that identity that I was chasing. And the identity piece, I think, is important, or it was for me, because I wasn't necessarily like setting these insane goals at the beginning. It was more like I was chasing this person that I wanted to try and become, which I had more control over because I knew that my actions could somehow get me there. And then over time, you get like a week under your belt and you're like, oh gosh, I haven't, used drugs in a week outside of jail, after jail. And I've been working out and doing all these things. And then you just start to change and you slowly start to shed away that old version of yourself. And I think the cool thing is that once you know this because it's the exact same thing that happened to you, is once you change completely and have this reinvention, you don't even recognize the person you used to be.
Oh,
That
it's
person to you
wild.
is so, I mean, I don't want to say offensive or embarrassing, but you look at that person like they're a ghost. You're like, who is this person? I don't know them, because you're so different once you make that change.
That is like one of the hardest things to describe to people is the experience of being on the other side of it and looking at your old life and going, who the hell was that guy? Like, obviously he's like, well, yeah, I know it was me and I'm aware and I have the memories and, of course it was, but like, it's so far removed from how I do anything today. It's so far removed from the thought processes, the excuses, the justifications for things. And I remember being in recovery and really trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this thing? Like, what am I trying to actually accomplish here? And I was such a jerk. Like I was such an asshole in recovery early on. I mean, I was not a good person. And I remember like having this moment with one of the house managers at my sober living facility because obviously I'm not going to use when I'm in rehab. It's very difficult to use when it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to use when you're in rehab. So when I was in the sober living facility, we kind of had this conversation, and where I was sitting there, and my house manager asked me this question. He goes, "Hey, why do you think you survived your suicide attempt?" And I did not want to have this conversation with him. And so I said the first thing that came to my mind, which was just like, I don't know, man. Maybe my body didn't want me to die. Maybe I'm supposed to be here like for something else. And I don't know why, but like when I heard those words, maybe my body didn't want me to die. It gave me this permission to look at my body as something that was protecting me from harm rather than this thing that I hated. And I kind of like decided, like, whoa, what if all of the things that I went through, all of the bullying, the self-harm, the drug use, the overdose, what if the reason why I survived all those things is because the reality is that I am a person that has a body that has never given up on me? What if that's an identity I could lean into? What if I could say, what if this is the greatest ally I'll ever have in my entire life and it wants to be sober as much as I do? Oh man, all of a sudden I started to see like my identity was to be a partnership, which is like, what would I do if I could give my body the best opportunity to be the best version of myself? Who is that person? Right? He tells the truth, right? Honesty is huge in recovery, right? So I'm an honest person. Number two, I eat nutritious foods. Number three, I exercise regularly. Number four, I take my recovery seriously. And I remember I had a conversation with my house manager the next morning and said, hey man, when we were talking, I think that question you asked me helped me figure out what I really want my identity to be, like who I want to be. And I told him, he goes, good. Now just act like it. And I was like, whoa, like just being told, like, good. You know exactly what he looks like. You know what he does. Just act like it. And it was like this, it was kind of like making it that simple, even though it was not going to be easy. It did make it simple enough to translate into action.
And you have to come up with these different value systems, like you said. Like it's like, I want to be a person who tells the truth. I want to be somebody who exercises. I want to be somebody who eats nutritious foods. And the reason I think that's so valuable is because addiction, it's like a religion. It's like that's all you care about all day, every day. And there's so much time that's consumed with doing so that if you don't find things to replace it, or you don't restructure your value system, you're going to be bored. You're going to be like, what do I do now? Like, I'm not doing drugs. Like, I have nothing to live for other than, my previous lifestyle. And you start to like hack away at this new version of yourself. And I think that I think the online world for transformation is very positive because you can get a lot of free information that you couldn't get decades ago. I think the problem becomes there's a lot of stuff that's focused on certain time frames and how fast you do certain things and what percentage of this or that, how much protein they get. And I think that's all well and good for the adjusted transformer, if you will. But for the newbies, it's tough because it's going to take a long time for you to rewire your brain in a different direction to start building healthier habits. And so you have to start. I think you craft those values like you said, and like I also mentioned too, and then you figure, okay, what are the simple steps I can take to do that? I mean, if you want to like eat more nutritious, where could you get more protein in it one meal the next day? Where could you get more movement? Who could you call that's somebody who's a positive influence? And she's these simple steps that add up over time.
It's interesting that you say that because let's take for context the eating healthy, and I completely agree with your point, which is like if you just decide to not use, you have a bunch of time on your hands, and that's not a good idea. If you really get clear about who you want to be and how you want to be in the world, well, then you now have things that you would do that not only eat up empty time during your day, but they also move you upward and propel you forward and towards that towards that new life. And then, after like a week or two, you start to see the return on that investment, the benefits of those behaviors. Like, oh, seems like these things are leading me towards the life I would like to live. I'm now motivated to keep going. That's interesting to me. What if I actually did it a little bit better? But speaking to the nutrition thing, which is like, if you figure out what you want to do, you should figure out how to do it with as much ease and repeatability as possible. I think complexity is a trap. Variety is a trap. I think simplicity is a superpower in recovery. Make it as easy as possible to do the healing thing. Make it easy to get to your meetings. Make it easy to talk to someone who could support you. Make your meals 3 to 5 ingredients at most, and make them repeatable. Right? Make it so that it's almost this automatic response to a mealtime where it's so simple and obvious that it's nearly impossible to avoid doing the healing thing, right? And if you were to design systems that look like that, you'll get through 7 days. And the reason why I say 7 days is that I really like to shrink the horizon for recovery. Getting sober for the rest of your life is a horizon you cannot see. But saying, you know what I want to do? I want to be a person who engages in my recovery in the best way that I could possibly do it in alignment with my values for the next 7 days. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure how much better my life feels at the end of those 7 days. And if it feels better enough, I run another 7 day experiment. 7 days is something you can conceptualize. You cannot conceptualize the rest of your life. So it will feel impossible. And if ever there's a moment where you quote unquote have a slip up in recovery where not that you would, relapse, but you get angry and you yell at someone or you don't act as your best self, you'll go, well, there it is. There's evidence. I can't do this for the rest of my life. Instead of going, what percentage of this week would look like the life I want? And what percentage looks kind of like the life I'm trying to move away from? And how can I refine for that? It becomes, kind of like an experiment. You're exploring your recovery.
Yeah, and I think cherry picking the addiction disease model can be helpful with this because I'll relate the when you're recovering from addiction, like tearing your ACL. And the reason I say that is when you first get into recovery, you're going to have cravings. It's going to be challenging. You're going to get angry, all the things, because you're still on that healing path. Just like if you were to tear your ACL, you're not going to be able to like day one start like
No, because
punches again.
nothing is ever fast enough, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about it in that context, understand your brain is injured right now and it needs some time to heal and some time to recover. And I think it's just so important to be aware of that because otherwise you will end up falling into this trap of, oh my God, see, I told you making a healthy change isn't good for me. See, I told you, blah, blah, blah. And I think one of the important things to realize is perspective is everything. You go into every major city and there's different pockets in every city. There's some pockets that are nicer than others. There's some pockets, there's the financial district. There's different areas that, have different things in them. Some have more crime, some don't. Some you'll see more people using drugs, some you won't. Like that's the same thing with like life. Like sometimes it takes you changing the scenery, changing the environment to like, hey, like, this pocket wasn't as normal as I thought it was. Now I'm like in a different pocket and I see things a little bit differently. I see that not everyone here is doing the things that I was doing. And now this feels a little bit more normal because your environment creates this false sense of normalcy. If you're so used to like behaving in a certain way, you're going to see that as completely normal. And so you have to give yourself some time to look at things objectively and to try to like figure out a way to like hijack that back in the right direction. The other thing I will say is, I think that we live in this all or nothing mentality. And with addiction, sometimes it is that way where you have to stop using heroin. You can't, there's no like there's no heroin in moderation. Right. But I think like when it comes to things like nutrition, and the reason I'm talking about this is because it's like we've said, it's an important habit to focus on if you're trying to improve your overall lifestyle and change your identity, is you have to take things slow. I remember I was working with a client and a couple of years ago, and she was eating like McDonald's and fast food 4 or 5 days a week, Coke, like regular Coke and Dr. Pepper like twice a day, and just tons of bad habits. And I said, okay, like for the first like 2 weeks, we're just going to focus on you not eating fast food for 1 day a week, like 1 day. And then we built that habit. And then she's like, oh, like I'm super proud of myself for doing this. And then it was 2 days, 3 days. Then she was feeling so good about doing that. She started on her own to be like, you know what? Like, I don't want to eat it as much. I don't feel good. I don't feel as good about it. I'm realizing I don't need it. And so that all happens with the momentum of small change. You're not going to get there by saying, hey, I'm going to cut out all fast food. Then you fall flat on your face. Like you can't take the New Year's resolution energy with you for the rest of your life. It just doesn't work.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is a perfect example of what I really appreciate in recovery, where if you look at it from the perspective of how am I going to build a life where use is no longer necessary and that I would be interested to show up and be present for. Like it's something I'm really excited. Like when I think about tomorrow, there's enough there that I'm interested in showing up, and I think that requires a what you would call, I guess we call like an explorer's mindset. Well, you're not trying to be perfect every single day. In fact, you can't be perfect every single day, and you can't figure out how to do this for the rest of your life. But if you take this 7 days at a time and you course correct every 7 days, where you go, okay, this seems like a good direction, but I think I need to do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of this. Let's go back this direction. The next 7 days, you keep course correcting, course correcting. You're going to refine your system to such a precision that looks like the life you want, not because you tried to be perfect on day one, but because you tried to figure it out. I like that there's an analogy, the 1969 Apollo mission to the moon, where we took astronauts, we trained them, and we put them in a rocket ship, we launched them into space. They navigated through space, they landed on the moon. So this was the first time this had ever happened. This is an extraordinary feat. It was also very dangerous, very much like addiction recovery. For most people, a lot of them, it's their first time. It's very dangerous. They're not sure what to do. But you would think, my gosh, they must have known how to get there. They never would have launched them into space to do something that dangerous if they didn't know how to get there. Doug, do you know what percentage of the flight time they were on course to the moon?
No.
It was 2%. So they were actually only on course 2%. Now, if you were to look at that from a objective perspective, right? From the as if someone looking at the flight path, go, oh my gosh, what an absolute near failure. It must have been sheer luck they landed on the moon. They spent 98% of the time going the wrong way. How the hell did they ever make this work? But if you were to pause and consider from the subjective point of view, from the point of view of the astronauts, they spent 98% of the time course correcting. They spent 98% of the time figuring out how to safely get where they wanted to go. That is such a great analogy for addiction recovery. It's going to feel like you're not sure how to get there. In the beginning, you're making big sweeping course corrections, and it feels like, I don't know if we're going to get there. I don't know. I don't know if I know we're headed roughly in the right direction, but I'm not sure. But as you keep moving forward, those course corrections are smaller and smaller until you see what looks like the endpoint. You've got it in your sights. That's such a great analogy for people. It's like, take on that identity of not making it about whether you're doing well. Is the system that you're running allowing you to be successful with ease? If it is, great, keep going. If not, refine the system. You are exactly the type of person, you have the ability to do this thing. The systems, the environment, the support, the nutrition, the movement, all those things need to be refined enough so that you can keep being successful. The identity is, am I the kind of person who wants to be interested in refining those things? If I am, I'm going to make it.
You're so right about the whole like crafting and refining things. And there's two things here. The first thing is you think about people in many cases when they discuss like family vacations. A lot of times their best moments are like the ones that where things like went sideways. You know what I mean? And they have like a
Yeah.
crazy story behind it. And there was the
Christmas vacation,
yeah, it's like the part where at least you got through it. You know what I mean? You found a way to figure things out. I mean, I know one thing that um, that comes up for me in talking about this too is I remember one of the best ways I was described transformation is making a pot of brown or making a pan of brownies. It's like the first time you try to make a pan of brownies by yourself, there's gonna be freaking chocolate everywhere. Maybe you don't get the right ratio with eggs and flour or whatever you put in there, and then they're kind of like watery or they're dry, and then like you refine it. And you're like, oh, I know how.
the kitchen's a
You
mess.
know what I mean? This I'm on the verge of divorce because there's like I've ruined like our walls. You know what I mean? Because there's chocolate everywhere, and and then like you refine it, and then you refine it, and then like after like 5 to 10 times, you've got that thing down to where now you know how to make brownies. And I think that's kind of the same thing with transformations because every person, at least in my experience, there's not just one transformation. Like I was just writing about in my book how like one of the greatest setbacks I had was during the pandemic and how that really shaped me. And that was another transformation that I had to go through. And I'm sure you've had other transformations in your life too, Adam, where it's like you go through it. But what happens is once you go through that first big one, you have the blueprint to figure it out moving forward. And it's not like it's going to be perfect, but you know the process. You know it's going to be a journey. You know there's going to be a lot of refining. You know that it's not going to be easy. You know there's going to be some twists and turns. You're going to get stuck in the mud a bit. But the difference is you have the ability and the capability to know that you can get there, which is why I think talking about this is so important. Because once you develop that identity of who you are, like making poor decisions in the thick of adversity doesn't fit in that equation anymore because now you're focused on who you are today.
You know, it's interesting because early in recovery, there's this desire to be certain.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to be certain. I need to be certain that this is going to work because this is a big deal. I'm risking a lot here. I'm taking a big chance, and I'm going into a dangerous thing here, which is I have to figure out how to navigate this world without the thing that allowed me to feel safe navigating this world. And like that's so I want to be certain that I'm not going to fail. And there's of course you want to be confident. You want to be confident that you're surrounded by support that could support you when you need it. You need to be confident that you are putting yourself in situations where you have the lowest risk of relapse possible. Like you wouldn't want to go to a party, like a rave 2 weeks into your recovery. It's a high risk scenario. You want to be confident, but you want to leave certainty off the table. In fact, you don't want to rely on certainty. There was a lot of things I became certain about. And unfortunately, at a certain point, that certainty limits your growth because you're sacrificing what you could be for what you are now. You won't allow what you could be to take place. You won't allow yourself to possibly know better. And that's a tough thing in recovery because, well, like I said, this is a big risk. This is a big deal. And it's not nothing. It's a huge effort. It's an extraordinary effort. And so people want to feel certain. They want to feel certain that they know the right way to go. I would say try to be confident that you've got a really good idea of which direction to go and that you're interested in finding out that it's valuable or that it isn't. You want to be excited to find out that something isn't valuable. That's information for you. That's good information for you. I think that, again, from the identity point, which is I just would like to know more about myself. That's a good direction to go. I don't want to decide that I'm failing or succeeding. I want to seek to know myself better. Did the way that I did that thing with those people, does that lead me in the direction I want to go? Yes, great, good. We can try that again. If not, good. I now know that. I'm so glad I know that now. It doesn't mean it might not work in the future, but right now, let's not do that. Let's go a different direction or try it differently.
And then you start to find meaning in what you went through. Like once you get through all these iterations and the transformation and you get through, a good bit of recovery, I think you'll start to have a lot of self-reflection, specifically after the first 30 days, you'll have a lot. But then I think at 90 days, it really compounds and you get 6 months and then you get a year and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm completely different than I was a year ago. And then you see like, oh, like I went through this because of these reasons, or here's the lessons that I learned, or here's the relationships that I built that I wouldn't have had. Here's the job or the career that I have. I mean, both of us we would have been doing something completely different if we had made it out alive, if it wasn't for what we went through. Right. And it's not to say that you should purposefully go through pain to find purpose. It's more like, can you find a way to attach meaning to what you're going through? So that it doesn't become this horrific feeling of misery while you're on the up and up.
Well, I think that actually leads it right into what we want to talk about most, which is why, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to do this? And one of the great things about suffering is that it tells you what matters to you. It's like, well, suffering is a consequence of something important to you being threatened or being harmed or being, put at risk, right? So if you're, let's say, early on in recovery, like for example, when we talked about that person asked me about the surviving suicide, and I had to ask myself, why would I want to do this thing? Right. I survived. Yes, I'm going to now own the identity that I have a body that is not a failure. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to hate. It's actually something to be incredibly grateful for. It kept me alive through the worst moments, the most dangerous moments of my life. My body never gave up on me. And in order to do that, it's going to be difficult. And there's got to be a willingness to be comfortable being uncomfortable and a willingness to be extremely uncomfortable, right? I have to be okay with doing that. Why? Why in the world would I be willing to do that? And most people will say, if, like, for example, they were looking at me, they go, oh, I know why he's doing it. He would want to. He's over 300 pounds. He has diabetes, heart disease. He nearly died from substance abuse. He's broke. That must be why he's motivated, right? Well, why wouldn't that be a motivating factor for him? And it's true that every one of those things was occurring for me, but they weren't why I would want to do this. And the reason I say that is because negative consequences do not motivate long term change. That's not what they do. The great thing about negative consequences is that they let you know that there's something incredibly meaningful, important, and irreplaceable in your life that is being threatened. And whatever that is or those things are, that's why you're going to do this thing. That's why you're motivated to take this journey of recovery. It's an act of protection for the things in your life that give you the experience of feeling meaningfully alive, right? So they're different for everybody, but they're usually rooted in some kind of loving, protective thing. It's like, oh, I want to show up and be, strong for my family, right? It's a very masculine thing, right? And masculinity is an asset, in my opinion, in recovery. I want to show up and I want to be strong for my family. I want to make sure that they're safe, and I have the capacity to do that if I go through recovery, right? I want to be strong for myself, and I want to take care of myself, and I have the capacity to do that in recovery, right? And there's a purpose that I'd like to share within a community of shared respect that I could do really well if I go through recovery. That's why I'm going to do this, and I know exactly what those things look like, and I know exactly the kind of life I would live in order to do that well. Good, let's go.
Well,
That's how I feel.
I think at the beginning you got to use whatever leverage you can to change. I think negative consequences, at least for me, they can create short term change.
Oh no,
And
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
don't know how long, but I know for me, like thinking about people who bullied me, thinking about my wrongdoings, thinking about how I was treated, thinking about all the stuff that I did, gave me a ton of fuel to change for the first few years of my life. And then eventually it's like, well, I can't just keep being mad at myself. And it's not attractive to be like 26 and thinking about what happened to you when you were 8. You know what I mean? Or whatever the example is.
right.
So eventually you have to find that bridge to where you're like, okay, like what am I gonna choose now that's gonna lead to long-term change? And that's where the identity piece comes into. That's where, like, once you start to change, hopefully you become aligned with some sort of spirituality practice, or you find a good community of people, or you get into fitness or whatever, to where now, like, being healthy is because you just like working out and because you like the way it makes you feel, not because you're mad that somebody said you had like chicken legs when you were in 6th grade or something.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing is, it's like those things they let you know. It's like, oh, I could be more than I am. Maybe that insult that I experienced when I was a kid, I got bullied in school, and I got bullied at home sometimes. And maybe the insults that they were saying were mean, but maybe there was also some truth in them. Maybe I could have been more than I was. I didn't know how to do it, and so it's absolutely unacceptable that they would treat me that way. But maybe the thing that upset me wasn't that they were right, but was that I could be more than I am, and I know it. And it's like, well, what if I could become that thing? What if I could become that thing that was, if people were to see me in the world, they go, oh my gosh, I don't know how he did that. That's remarkable. That is worthy of applause. I've tried to do things similar to that, and I couldn't even get through 2 weeks. This guy did it while getting sober. This guy got fit while getting sober. This guy reversed disease while getting sober. This guy found purpose while getting sober. That's unbelievable. Bro, I don't know how you did that. Like, what if that's the journey there? Is like, if you accomplish that feat, well, you have nothing but respect for yourself. How could you have anything less than respect for yourself?
Yeah, and I think that's what it is I think it comes down to being proud of yourself for what you've accomplished and what you've gone through, and then just figuring out ways. I think the other thing that I think is important too is, like, how can you find ways to find meaning in the early parts of recovery, to where it doesn't
Oh,
make sense to do so, to where it's like, oh my, it's not, because now, like, the masks come off and now you're like, oh no, like, my relationships are crap, I may or may not have a job right now. I may or may not be in a bunch of debt. I've put
Yeah,
on
you
some
see
weight.
the disaster that is your life clearly,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it's like, where's the meat? Where's the silver lining in this? And I think the one thing that I will say is, you can't go out like looking for meaning like that. I think meaning just comes over time as you get through it, as you start to evolve, and you'll have these aha moments. I think very organically, you'll start to be like, oh, like this makes more sense to me, or that makes more sense to me, or the meaning is, man, like I'm really proud of myself for like being a weekend, and I've been going to meetings or doing whatever you need to stay connected. Like there's meaning in that, right? And I think that you have to find these small wins when it comes to connection and purpose early on, without like looking at it in a very like macro Pollyanna way where you want to have this huge revelation like 2 weeks in. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I agree with you. I think meaning is something that's built. Meaning is something that's built by finding out who you truly could be if you put your efforts toward it, right? And unfortunately, because we say our conversations are a lot focused towards young men, is that young men in particular, seem to feel that their ability to feel competent and capable has been insulted and taken from them in modern society, right? This is likely due to the fact that the daily behaviors of young men that give them a sense of competence and direction are offered labeled as toxic, and they're shamed, toxic traits in the social conversation. But I just want you to know, like, in my opinion, masculinity by nature cannot be toxic. It's just a definition, and it is not harmful. It's necessary. Telling young men that their nature is shameful, unattractive, and no longer valuable to others is toxic. That's toxic behavior. And so, one of the things that I really find to be valuable is in recovery, young men, is find other young men that you could be yourself around. Find other young men that would, if you were, there was a day where you're, hey guys, like, I'm not going to the gym today. They're like, they will not let you off the hook. They won't do it in a shameful way, but I had that early in recovery. And what that allowed me to do was it allowed me to see the capacity for change that I didn't see in myself. And all of a sudden that guided me towards meaning, which is like, well, what if the meaning of my life right now is to find out how capable I am, to find out what I could do this one week if I really gave it everything I've got. And I surrounded myself with people who wouldn't let me off the hook if I just said, well, I'm a little tired. It's like, well, dude, everyone's tired sometimes. But like, you made a commitment. Let's go. Like, it's cool, man. Like, just come. Like, I find that you're 100% right, Doug. Meaning is built. And meaning is the foundation for psychological resilience. Without it, struggle is pointless.
I agree with you, especially about the masculinity part. Like, I don't think that masculinity is toxic. I think it can be. I mean, there's certain elements where I think it could be, where if you're,
Well, I think people can be toxic.
for sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's what
Right?
people are.
Why would there be no, if there's a toxic masculinity, there therefore must be a toxic femininity? It's like, well, no, there's not. There's just toxic people.
Yeah. Well, and I think taking that one step further, what I mean is that I think that, there's like two extreme narratives that exist. There's one that's on the one side that's like, hey, just treat women very poorly, be, as alpha male as possible. Don't have any kind of emotional intelligence, like don't ever share your emotion, like yada yada. And then the other side, they're like, oh, we'll just be more feminine, and it's like neither
Yeah.
one works. And I think that,
No.
yeah, you're right. Like masculinity in itself is very healthy. I think that people use it, or it gets a bad rap because of the way that people act in certain areas, and then that gets kind of twisted up and then misconstrued.
The lowest days, and I know you're going to agree with this because I know this person is a guiding light for you too. On some of my lowest days, I watched interviews of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
I needed a strong male presence that gave me inspiration to get up and go do work, right? Like, and that's the masculinity that I'm talking about. It's the coach, it's the leader, it's the person who, when you're at your lowest, if you could just hear their voice in your head, you would do one more rep that you didn't think you had. right? You would do one more day of recovery that you didn't think you could do. And like for me, I find that brotherhood early in recovery, I lived in a house with 10 other guys, and I was really fortunate. All these guys were great guys. I'm not, I mean, obviously we all had our issues, right? But I feel like I don't know if I would have recovered as well if I didn't do it surrounded by young men interested in the same outcome as me, which is like, let's forge together and let's go do this next, 3 months of recovery. We're going to do this as a unit. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that if you look at what people want in the world, it doesn't matter if you're in recovery or not, they want respect. They want people to look at them and treat them a certain way, look at them a certain way, whatever. And the best way to do so is to start showing self-respect. And these are the quote unquote like masculine qualities of being super self-disciplined, assertive, following through with your word, working on getting strong, like mentally, emotionally, and physically, all these things that if you do these things and you start to respect yourself, people are going to start to show you respect. It's like there's a reason that when you see somebody who's super fit walk into a room, like people notice. It just is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong.
You
It's
know,
a
you know
fact.
the effort it
It,
takes to do
yeah,
that. That person put in the work,
and you,
you know?
you, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's like, and the reason is because they have respect for that person's work ethic and what it took to
Yeah.
get to that place. They know
Yeah.
how much hard work it takes to get strong muscles and to lose a bunch of weight or to stay lean or whatever the example is. They know like why it takes so much time. And the same thing with like Arnold Schwarzenegger. The reason that you and I both love Arnold is because we both know the type of work it took him to get from where he was as a kid to where he is now. I mean, tons of work. If you think about like all the talk about transformations. I mean, that
I know,
guy,
right?
you know what I mean? As a bodybuilder, as an
It's
actor,
unbelievable.
governor. I mean, he's had his own personal stuff, his own health issues, and he continues to show up, every
I
day
think
for
that
himself.
it's the like remarkable singular focus that he participated in daily that I find the most inspiring. Like that's the kind of focus I want on the things that matter the most to me in my life. Is like if I could do them in the way that he did training in the gym, if I could do all things with that level of interest and attention and singular focus, like wow. I don't think there's a thing in my life that couldn't be done better if I was to approach it from that perspective.
I saw my buddy
It's
Jay
like,
Ferrugia referencing I think it was a Warren Buffett quote, and he was pretty much talking about like focus. And you're gonna like what he said about this. He said Warren Buffett said something like write down like 100 things you want to accomplish in your life and narrow it down to five, and cross out like 95 and get to the five core most important things you want to do, because those are the things that, I mean, out of the 100, those are going to be the ones that really matter to you, and those are going to be the ones that probably have the most depth and probably the ones that you can like put that much focus and effort into. And obviously I think there's nuance to those things, but I think the problem is, when it comes to transformation, and recovery obviously is looped into that, we get so distracted and we want to do everything at
oh, yeah,
once, when really it's like,
yep,
well, what's the most important? What are the big rocks, right? Like
yeah.
is the
What's
is
the 80%?
yeah, is the big rock fasting? Probably not. The big rocks are probably, are staying away from the drugs that you were abusing. They're finding community. It's
Being of service.
being of service, getting some level of fitness in. If you're somebody that hasn't exercised, or continuing on that path, if you are, it's probably like figuring out where your finances are. Like those are probably the big rocks you focus on initially. And then as you evolve, those rocks are steady. And then you start to focus on some other smaller rocks to pile on top. And then you can like, oh, well, maybe, now I want to try to like, cut out more processed foods, or I want to try intermittent fasting every now and then, or I want to, whatever. But you got to get those foundational rocks in place first to be able to have a place to put those smaller rocks on.
Jordan Peterson said, if you really want to know where to focus your attention, take 10 minutes every morning and meditate on your life and ask yourself, what's one thing that I'm doing wrong, that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could do better, that I would do better, and if I did, my life would move forward. It's like you spend 10 minutes thinking about that, and this is a thing that you would do every day. If you spend 10 minutes thinking about that, you're going to get the answer you want. And he says, it won't be the answer you want, it will be the necessary one. And I just like, that's so true. If I was to spend 10 minutes every morning thinking about one thing that I do every single day that is holding me back from my highest potential, whether it's some form of excess social media use or procrastinating here and there, that I could do better. And I would do it. If I would do it, my life would be better. It's like I could find something. I absolutely could. And it would be something that would seem so small in the beginning, but the compounded return on it, right? Everything compounds and doubles, right? Or compounds, and it just gets so it starts like nothing's moving. And then all of a sudden your life is changing drastically because of the compounded results of it. It's like that's that's how you need to think about recovery. Don't think about all the little things here and there. It's like, what's the thing that if you were to do it well, you would get through this 1 week of recovery in a way that you would be proud of yourself? So maybe it's going to a meeting every day. That's a big deal. And that's the thing not everyone does,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's just eating a healthy breakfast every day, going to the gym every day. That doesn't mean you have to like kill yourself in the gym. Just go. Go to the gym, spend 15 minutes there, if anything. Just like your job is to go, to put yourself in the environment where the opportunity to do the best is available, right? Like give yourself a chance.
Have you ever read the book The One Thing by Gary Keller?
I haven't.
I think he was the executive chairman of Keller Williams, like
Okay.
realty. And he talked about
Yeah.
that one thing, like what's the one thing you got to focus on and just focus on that. Like if you try to focus on 20 things at once, you may do like 10 of them decent, you may do 5 of them pretty fair, and then 5 pretty poor, instead of like doing one thing super great and super solid.
It's funny you say that. The doctors Dean and Aisha Sherzai, they're the world's leading authority on cognitive longevity and brain health, and they they say no one multitasks. You're doing multiple things poorly. It's like focus on one thing at a time. Put your entire attention on it. That's the best way to do it. Set time on your schedule to do those other things and only do those other things. But in the moment, be focused singularly on one thing.
So true, man. And I think that getting back to our conversation around like identity and meaning, I think that there's stages, and I think there's layers to this. I think initially, focusing on recovery for sure is so important. And then as you get that like down, quote unquote, where you're like, hey, all right, I've already accepted the fact that I'm not going to, use the drugs that I was abusing. I need to go to meetings or community, and you have like that dialed in, then you can focus on the next thing. And it's like, oh, now I've gotten myself into fitness that's really got me excited. Now I can pay more attention to that. And then you start to stack these things. And then over time, these all just become like your new identity and personality. Now you're not just seeking out these things, or you're like, hey, I got to figure out a way to implement this into my life. Like, no, now this is your life. Like, this is your new life. Like, you just do it. You don't have to think about it anymore. Like, I don't like today. I went for a run outside. It wasn't like I was sitting on the couch and being like, I don't know if I want to do it. I don't know. I don't have to. It's like, no, I just knew I was going to go do it. There was no, I wasn't trying to, there was no talk decision in my mind. It was like just what I do.
It's an automatic response.
Yeah.
It's just what you do now. It's not even what you do, it's who you are. It's like that's an interesting thing though, is there'll be a point in your recovery where recovery stops being something you do and it becomes something that you are. You can't not do it anymore, right? It's how you've designed your life. Like you said, you focus on one thing, you build that. I'm going to be a person who stops using, and instead of using, I'm going to go to meetings every day. Great. Now I'm going to start eating healthier and go to meetings every day. Now I'm going to start exercising, eating healthier, and going to meetings every day. Now I'm going to have something to be of service to, going to the gym, eating healthier, and going to meetings every single day. You have now become the architect of a life where use is a lot less likely. How fantastic. And it didn't happen on day one. It happened through exploration, finding the things that would interest you. And if you built them into your life well, your life has less opportunity for use and more opportunity for growth. That's the identity that you need to find out. It's like, I'm the person who wants to figure that out. It's like, don't be the person who wants to be sober for the rest of their life. Be the person who wants to figure out how they can make a life where use is not necessary.
And it does take some time. I think that, like we said at the beginning, I know we got to wrap here in a couple minutes, but I know, like we said at the beginning, like you have to develop these core values around the person that you want to become. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, and I don't think you need to be super specific. I don't think that at the beginning you should say, well, I'm never going to ever use drugs again. Because I think the thought of that at the beginning is so overwhelming. Just like you wouldn't tell somebody that is just starting to eat better to cut out all processed foods at once, right? No, and obviously, like you're not telling people to continue to use, substances that are nearly killing them. But the idea is that you have to focus on the here and now and the day to day process. And once you identify that you're like, hey, I want to become a person that doesn't need drugs to feel better about myself. I want to eat mostly nutritious foods. I want to exercise on a regular basis, blah, blah, blah. Then you're like, okay, like where are the small wins and the big rocks I can focus on today? Well, today, if I'm somebody who hasn't done these things, it's not using the drugs. Today, it's also going for that walk. It's trying to eat more fruits and vegetables, where the example is. And then that starts to compound, and then you build your identity from there. I know we got to wrap in a minute or two, but any closing thoughts?
Well, I think I want to piggyback on what you just said, which is like, don't tell yourself you're going to be sober for the rest of your life. Don't tell yourself you're never going to use again. Like, don't participate in the negative. Don't do that. Simon Sinek, the great thinker, modern thinker, he said, your brain can't conceptualize the negative. He goes, here, don't think of a pink elephant. Right. So, he said, downhill skiers know this very well. When they're going through the trees, they're not thinking, don't hit the trees, don't hit the trees. They're thinking, stay on the path, stay on the path, stay on the path. Because if you're thinking, don't hit the trees, what are you looking for? You're looking for the trees to miss. And when you look for the trees, where do you head? You veer yourself towards the trees. It's a poor strategy. So don't tell yourself you're never going to use again. Tell yourself you're interested in participating in behaviors that a person who doesn't use would do. Right? Tell yourself that you're going to go to meetings regularly. Tell yourself that you're going to participate in some kind of act of service for yourself or someone else. That you have something that you could be a part of that's bigger than you, whether that's spirituality, religion, whatever it is. Eating healthy, going to the gym, finding a community of shared respect. If you say, today I'm doing those things, your opportunity for use is far less. And you know exactly who you are and what you're going to do that day. It's far more valuable to be actively engaged in the things that would move you forward than to passively avoid the things that would hold you back.
It's a great way to end, man. Thanks for this awesome convo. I mean, I think this episode is really going to hit home with people because I think it's just so crucial for people. Is like, how can you transform your identity and the person that you want to become, like throughout this process? So, um, awesome episode. Definitely let us know your feedback in the comments if you want more topics covered that we haven't gotten into yet. I know we're going to start bringing guests on soon.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so if you have any
Yeah.
requests
Let us
on,
know topics that you want to hear us talk about. I mean, there's things that maybe we're not aware that you want to hear about. We're here for you. Remember, Doug and I very clearly said this show is for that person who's out there. This is the show that we wish we could have listened to when we were in recovery. So this show is for you. If there's a topic you want to hear, if there's a conversation point, if there's something that you're curious about, let us know. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to discuss it. We'd love to be of service to every single listener out there.
yep, couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, we're here for you as a means of service. So appreciate everybody's support. Comment below if this with your biggest takeaway, and we'll see you next week.